I've been coming here for several years now. Katja Molheim, Tobias are dear friends, and they started one of the nicest conferences, bringing not only investment issues, but also family structural issues. I'm Catherine Shiang. I've been running the family office that I work for now close to 18 years. The family still has operating companies, which builds and distributes to the family office, which is where I'm at. So I'm not with the operating companies, which does packaging and all forms of packaging, especially now research, looking at biodegradable packaging. We deploy about $500 million plus and minus a year in new cash, so fresh funds, dry powder, and I personally angel, and I find both, people say that's a very different broad spectrum. I find it very interesting to be able to be part of the operating companies that I angel, as well as being part of the late stage, which is what the family tends to do. Direct investments is always the more efficacious way of investing because there are no fees, there are no managers, there are no GPs, there are no fund of funds, which is a triple layer, there are no advisors, if you will, but it's not for everybody. And the reason why is because you have to build a team. Once you write the check, it doesn't mean 5 years later you're going to get your money back. There's an exit. Somebody has to follow and provide value. Somebody has to be part of that. And as you do many of these direct investments, you have an Excel with 50,000 of them. How are you going? You have to tag a person to manage and follow on the investments, or you lose track of where you deployed your capital. So unless you build a team that is either in PE or VC specializing, and now I'm using very broad terms because obviously there are sectors. In venture capital, are you focused on early stage, mid, late stage? Are you focused on the new buzzword, generative AI, which is what ChatGPT is? Or are you focusing on biosciences, like food sciences? Are you focusing on 3D printer, which is my new big thing because there's 3D printer for food. So there's food ink. And this is really exciting because now you can deploy this type of 3D printer for developing economies. Basically, direct investment is always the way to go, but not every family should be doing that, and not everybody should be doing that, depending on the size of your team. Fund of funds is one vehicle. Direct GPs is another vehicle. In other words, funds themselves. We tend to use funds in emerging markets, in sectors we don't have a lot of experience, because we learn from our managers, we learn from the GPs, because their focus, that's their dedication, that's their expertise. Once we feel a little bit confident, we'll probably screw up and do some direct investments on our own, and we learn along the way. So fund, I think, are wonderful ways to get into a sector and learn. And if you feel confident and you want to deploy more capital and actually build a team around that sector or that experience investment category, then sure. Geopolitics has been a big conversation piece in the past couple days. If a country, say the United States, very mature market, robust market, decides to change their tax laws on a certain, instead of corporate tax at 30%, which it isn't, it's at 20%, but say hypothetically moved it up to 30%, all of a sudden your investment value has changed when you take that distribution. So I like to point this out. In Finland, somebody asked me when I was speaking in Helsinki, why aren't there more venture capital in the Nordic countries? Well, first of all, Netherlands has a corporate tax rate of 58%. Finland has it around 52%. So these are regulatory political risks that if you're an investor and you are waiting you take the investment risk 5 to 7 years, and by the time you draw out that capital, 50% of that is taxed. There isn't a lot of incentive to go into those countries where you've absorbed the risk and you're only getting 50%, you're already getting a haircut. So these Nordic countries and certain countries need to restructure their regulatory. So I want to kind of diffuse the term political risk, because that's not, we have risk, political risk, in the form of taxation, in the form of environment regulations, depending on what sector you're going into. Unions, labor law, so that has always been around, geopolitical risk, if you will. It depends on the sector you're going into, the investment you're going into, and how you can leverage the efficacy, the efficiency of that investment opportunity. So let's not conflate and get all excited about what's going on in today's world. War has always been in the world. So it is about allocating your risk with your investment, with your portfolio construction properly and objectively. I am so excited about having the opportunity to play in the tech space and to have that as an opportunity to allocate into Series B and C late stage, and I personally angel. In an earlier panel today, somebody asked, where's tech going? What's the big, cool tech stuff you're seeing? I've said, first of all, the 3 core buckets of tech I always like is who we are, tech, how do we live, tech, and how do we play, tech. And all 3 will define the technology. So somebody said, well, what about quantum? Quantum I bucket as part of the middleware. That's my definition of, say, Oracle does middleware, Broadcom does. We need that in order to, 5G network, mesh network, we need that in order to look at the applications. So somebody asked me, how do you get insight and intel into all this cool tech or opportunities from emerging markets to mature markets? And it is, some of it's going to conferences like this. I'm not being paid to advertise, by the way. But most often it is actually data subscriptions and also working with other families, working with information providers, and working with incredible, talented GPs. And these GPs offer you, as you follow their funds or fund of funds, as you follow the technology, the entrepreneur as they develop, they're going to give you information outside of your comfort zone. Information, you just need to be a lot more open-minded. One needs to be, not you, one needs to be more open-minded. And the more you're involved into that community, the more you're able to pick up. So for example, a big part of a nonprofit that I work with, for example, funded a $10,000 fund to capture rubidium neutral atom and rotate it. Why is that interesting? It's interesting because it will help people building quantum computers if they wanted to build quantum computers. To impregnate data onto that very small neutral atom. That's cool stuff. And so that is here, and what I want to say is, and that's usually part of the universities, that's part of a community. The more involved you are, the more interesting, and by the way, more competitive your term sheet is, because we never really talked about the actual investment process. Just because you want to invest in something doesn't mean the entrepreneur or the venture capital the fund will let you in. There's a lot of knee pads involved because they want to have you bring value to them. And you're competing with a lot of other investors. So some people said to me, so you work with other families? Heck no, they're my competitors. So it's either me they're going to get the term sheet for or somebody else, unless we've been playing nice for a long time. And we bring different values to that company. If we're both bringing passive investment, that's not going to work. Or if one of us, because I don't want them to give passive, I want them to be actively rowing and helping that entrepreneur or that fund manager.